Hey humans, welcome to Read to Me, Matt Dunn. I'm Matt Dunn, and I'm going to read to you. We are reading Frankenstein by Shelley, and we're on Chapter 9. Chapter 9. The next day, contrary to the prognostication of our guide, was fine, although clouded. We visited the source of the Arviron, and rode about the valley until evening. These sublime and magnificent scenes afforded me the greatest consolation that I was capable of receiving. They elevated me from all littleness of feeling, and although they did not remove my grief, they subdued and tranquilized me. Tranquilized it. In some degree, also, they diverted my mind from the thoughts over which it had brooded for the last month. I returned in the evening, fatigued but less unhappy, and conversed with my family with more cheerfulness than had been my custom for some time. My father was pleased and Elizabeth overjoyed. "My dear cousin," she said, "you see what happiness you diffuse when you are happy? Do not relapse again." Okay. Let me side note. If you do have depression, it sucks. And people telling you to be happy doesn't make it work. People telling you not to be depressed, that don't work. It's shitty. Speaking of depression. The following morning, the rain poured down in torrents, and thick mist hid the summits of the mountains. The rain depressed me, my old feelings recurred, and I was miserable. I knew how disappointed my father would be at this sudden change, and I wished to avoid him until I had recovered myself so far as to be enabled to conceal those feelings that overpowered me. I knew that they would remain that day at the inn. And as I had ever inured is the word, inured. I don't know what that fucking means. But anyway, had I ever inured myself to rain? That was a statement. Moisture and cold, I resolved to go alone to the summit of Montanvert. I remembered the effect that the view of the tremendous and ever-growing glacier had produced upon my mind when I first saw it. It had then filled me with a sublime ecstasy that gave wings to the soul and allowed it to soar from the obscure world to light and joy. The sight of the awful and majestic in nature had indeed always the effect of solemnizing for all of you book nerds out there. You can comment on and tell me what this word is I'm trying to say. And let me have it, I don't care. My mind, and causing me to forget the passing cares of life. I determined to go alone, for I was well acquainted with the path, and the presence of another world destroyed this, and the presence of another world just would, oh my God. I'm trying too hard. And the presence of another would destroy the solemn grandeur of the scene. He wants to be alone and brood, I guess. The accent is precipitous. should give up. Cancel the YouTube channel right fucking now. Precipitous. But the path is cut into a continual and short windings, which enable you to surmount the perpendicularity of the mountains. It is a scene terrifically desolate. In 1,000 spots the traces of the winter avalanche may be perceived, where trees lie broken and strewed on the ground, some entirely destroyed, others bent, leaning upon the jutting rocks of the mountain, or traversely upon other trees. The path, as you ascend higher and intersected by ravines of snow, down which stones continually roll from above. One of them is particularly dangerous, as the slightest sound, such as even speaking in a loud voice, produces a concussion of air sufficient to draw destruction upon the head of the speaker. The pines are not tall or luxuriant, but they are sombre. I guess the word maybe is somber? Sombre, and add an air of severity to the scene. I looked on the valley beneath. Vast mists were rising from the rivers which ran through it and curling into thick wreaths around the opposite mountains, whose summits were hid in the uniform clouds, while rain poured from the dark fucking sky and added to the melancholy impression. I received from the objects around me. Alas, why does man boast of sensibilities superior to those apparent in the brute? It only renders them more necessary beings. If our impulses were confined to hunger, thirst, and desire, we might be nearly free. But now we are moved by every wind that blows, and a chance word or scene that word may convey to us. Toasty. We rest. I got a little poem to read you. Poem. We rest. A dream has power to poison sleep. We rise. One wandering thought pollutes the day. We feel, conceive, or reason, laugh or weep, embrace fond woe, or cast our cares away. It is the same, for it joy or sorrow, be it joy or sorrow. The path of its departure still is free. Man's yesterday may never be like this morrow, his morrow. Not may endure, but mutability. End poem. It was nearly noon when I arrived at the top of the ascent. For some time I sat upon the rock that overlooks the sea of ice. A mist covered both that and the surrounding mountains. Presently a breeze dissipated the cloud, and I descended upon the glacier. The surface is very uneven, rising like the waves of a troubled sea, like a troubled sea, descending low and interspersed by rifts that sink deep. The field of ice is almost a league in width, just one width. But I spent nearly 2 hours crossing it. The opposite mountain is a bare, perpendicular rock. From the side where I now stood, Montanvert was exactly opposite, at the distance of a league. and above it rose Mount Blanc, in awful majesty. God damn these fucking fancy words. I remained in a recess of the rock, gazing on this wonderful and stupendous scene. The sea, or rather the vast river of ice, wound among its dependent mountains, whose aerial summits hung over its recesses. Ooh, creepy. I can only imagine what that looks like. Their icy and glittery peaks shone in the sunlight above the clouds. My heart, which was before sorrowful, now swelled with something like joy. I exclaimed, "Wandering spirits, if ye indeed wander, and do not rest in your narrow beds, allow me this faint happiness, or take me as your companion away from the joys of life." As I said this, I suddenly beheld the figure of a man at some distance, advancing toward me with the superhuman speed. He bounded over the crevices of the ice among which I had walked with caution. His stature also, as he approached, seemed to exceed that of man. I was troubled. A mist came over my eyes as I felt a faintness seize me, but I was quickly restored by the cold gale of the mountains. I perceived, as the shape came nearer, sight tremendous and abhorred, that it was the wretch whom I had created. I trembled with rage and horror, resolving to wait his approach, and then close with him in mortal combat. He approached. His countenance bespoke bitter anguish, combined with disdain and malignity, while an unearthly ugliness rendered it almost too horrible for human eyes. But I scarcely observed this. Anger and hatred had at first deprived me of utterance, and I recovered only to overwhelm him with words expressed of furious destination and contempt. Wow. Wow. He is spoken to this thing in the darkness. Well, if you want me to keep reading, please check out more of my videos. Like, subscribe, and comment down below, and we'll be friends, I promise.